Am I good?
All right, we're going to get started. I'll introduce Benjamin Michaelis, whose claim to fame is he became the co-author of the Essential C# book while riding around in a Land Cruiser in Africa using a Starlink connection. So ask him about that sometime. But here's Benjamin Michaelis. He does a lot of our stuff. He does a lot of our network stuff. He's one of the main guys that make sure our network stays secure and all that kind of stuff, as well as developing and being an overall great guy. So take it away.
Thanks, Brent. So today I'm talking about Visual Studio. So if you haven't noticed, when you kind of look at the little numbers next to Visual Studio, there hasn't been a big change in about 4 years. So 2022, we've been stuck on it for about 4 years, and this year they decided to give us some fun. So I kind of want to dive into what the new things are. Why would you choose Visual Studio in 2026? If you're anything like me, I kind of just choose whatever IDE is working best for me on this day. That could be Cursor or VS Code or whatever. Pick your VS Code fork of choice. But I wanted to just dive into why am I choosing Visual Studio today? Why has it actually changed in the past 2 months or so? Diving in, if you kind of look at the Visual Studio feature list for what happened in Visual Studio, this is just the AI-related features in Visual Studio that changed in 2026. If I were to list them all, I think I counted about like 34 maybe AI-related features in the launch. And so I wanted to actually begin with maybe the non-AI related features. I think we hear about all the AI-related features. You can go look up the Visual Studio.NET conference talks for those. But we're going to start with the non-AI features to begin with. So I pulled out the features that I thought were just the why the heck weren't these there before. These just seemed like low-hanging fruit, obvious ones. And there was a lot of quality of life improvements in Visual Studio 2026. I think there's some metric out there that they said they closed like 5,000 tickets and 300 feature requests in just the last 12 months. And remember, this is a 4-year-old update that they've done. And so these are just some of my favorites. As we dive into this, I've used a little .NET bot next to some of these features. And these features are the ones that are only on the insider's version of Visual Studio 2026. It's what I personally run. I run kind of just bleeding edge. I'm not afraid of kind of breaking things. But also, I've been running it for like 2, maybe more years. And I don't think I've really ever encountered something breaking in my insider's preview version. I've had to go back to the main version for, other than maybe something's kind of a hassle for a day or so. So that's just kind of FYI. So if you're not running bleeding edge and insiders and you're trying to do one of those things, that's why. Go install the preview. So I'm just going to kind of rapid fire start going through some of these features. Feel free to raise your hand. I'll try to keep an eye out. Otherwise, we'll kind of come to them questions at the end as we dive into these more. And look at that. Even as I'm speaking, I updated this last night, to be clear, and another version is available. So we're pushing out versions quickly. So the first feature I kind of want to point out is, I don't know if you guys have ever had a decently long file. This I wouldn't say is too long, but you're kind of scrolling along, and it's not going too fast. Little quality of life improvement feature. If you hold down the Alt key and then you scroll, there's this thing called the scroll speed multiplier that you're allowed to use in Visual Studio. You can set this, and it'll now change your scroll speed from your normal speed to some kind of multiplier. I think I'm at 5x right now. So now as you're going through your file quickly, you can hold down Alt, get to where you're going, and then come back down to your normal scroll speed afterwards.
Control or Alt?
Just Alt.
Alt, okay. Control zooms like every other app.
Yep, this is just Alt, so as you're scrolling, just hold the Alt key down, you'll keep going. The next thing is, let's make sure I'm not lying and I don't actually have this enabled already. I'm going to search compressed blank lines. Yep, so you may have not noticed, which hopefully is true, but on the right side here, there's significantly more code you can see. And the reason for that is they've enabled these two features, well, I've enabled them now, called compressed blank lines and compressed lines that don't have any alphanumeric characters. These are little quality of life improvements. I'm going to disable them, so watch the right side as I disable them. And when I turn those off, you'll see, and I have to scroll to let it trigger, you'll see that more code all of a sudden becomes, or less code becomes visible. So once again, I'll kind of enable those, and we'll kind of scroll, and you'll see how your editor view just changes slightly. Once again, very minimal, but it's one of those, why not get a little bit extra code space to be able to utilize. So these are not on by default, ones that I recommend doing. One feature that is now available if you don't use the enterprise version of Visual Studio 2026 is code coverage. It's something we've kind of come to know, love, and expect, and you haven't actually been able to use the code coverage feature in Visual Studio if you're not on the enterprise version. A little aside, they have now brought that down to the community and professional version, so if you're on any version of Visual Studio, you now get code coverage tooling built in. As well, I have historically, I do a lot with, sometimes when I'm designing like architecture diagrams or similar, I'm building out some kind of mermaid diagram. So in my repo, let me just grab one of these, I can actually add in a mermaid diagram. So I can go grab some documentation. Let's grab this one. And I've historically, I default just open up VS Code for all my markdown and mermaid diagrams and those kind of things because Visual Studio doesn't have great support for it. Starting in 2026, however, it's actually built-in support where you're kind of the first-party player being able to see your mermaid diagrams and edit them. I can see and edit them in a split view. And I can now do that in Visual Studio natively. Once again, little things. Something that historically has also gotten me to go over to VS Code by default is the startup time. The time it takes me to just get going is sometimes just a little painful. The solution file has to load. Visual Studio actually has to launch. Then like freezes there for like 10 seconds and you're sitting there, okay, what's happening? Important things are happening. And they've made some major improvements around this in the past couple years. I think they use the numbers of like 40% faster startup time and like 30% faster loading time for the solution itself, and they've reduced the hang time. And a little side-by-side comparison, I'm going to show a little video here of, on the left side here, we're going to have Visual Studio launching, and on the right side, we're going to have VS Code launching. So we're going to go, it's going to go pretty quick, and boom. They're both launched almost at the exact same time. And I think that is now no longer like, I'm going to VS Code just because I want it to launch quick and be in my development environment. I can actually use Visual Studio for that as well. Am I going too fast? Because I know I'm going rapid fire. Great. Next thing, the settings menu. I have created my own kind of little ecosystem because I have a habit of going and torching my laptops every couple months or years when they finally get a little too bloated and I want to start over. And being able to get back up and running has historically been a little bit of a pain point for me. I had to like go into the Visual Studio installer, export all my settings, save them the ugly XAML file, XML file that I have no idea what's happening in it, re-import it, realize that I only imported some of my settings, and then have to go set up my installation all over again. Now, if we just open up the settings menu, sure, this will get us there. First of all, the settings menu looks a little bit different. It looks a little bit cleaner, easier to navigate around. It also syncs with your profile, and I've found that it has done sync in the past. I found that this has been way more effective. And if you come from VS Code, you might notice a file that looks and takes some regards and some notes from VS Code, where now all your settings for Visual Studio are now stored in one large JSON file. So you're now able to take this file, import it somewhere else, bring it across your platforms, and be able to use this. This can store all your trust locations for Copilot, all your extensions, the MCP tools that I maybe have built in, anything like that are now controllable in your JSON file. Clicks work. There we go. Next thing. So now so if you're working in DevOps or GitHub, you may find out that you're jumping back and forth. I open up a PR, I get some PR comments, I'm looking at those PR comments on the GitHub repo, then I'm trying to go find that location on my actual code locally, make the change, go back, and I kind of have this back and forth. I usually just end up like really wanting my two screens. I have my DevOps and GitHub with my comments, and my Visual Studio open, and I'm jumping back and forth. So now you're actually able to, I haven't shown this feature, so just close your eyes for a second and we'll get there. It's really thinking. Okay, so now inline in my code, I am now able to see and the code that Copilot is actually, in this case, Copilot has given me a suggestion. But I'm actually able to see PR comments inline in my code. I'm able to act upon them. I'm able to have Copilot actually go solve these. And I don't actually ever have to leave my editor. So I can now kind of have my full PR cycle from the editor. I'm not bouncing back and forth. Able to do that right there. Another quality of life one, this is one that's still in the insiders, hasn't actually hit GA yet, is the hot reload improvements. If you're anything like me, I have had very mixed experiences with hot reload. Half the time I'm like, okay, I'm just going to stop and restart my app over and over again. So they've significantly reduced the number of, they call them rude edits, but blocking edits where it forced the app to have to restart. You have to stop your debug process and restart it when some kind of unsupported change is made. So what they've done now, first of all, there's less of those. So they've just said, hey, these kinds of errors and these kind of edits no longer are going to be the kind of thing that will stop hot reload from working. They've now also added in some flags in your csproj file that you can enable, or even your directory props file, where you can say, hot reload, when you notice that there's some kind of change that needs to be restarted, you can actually go restart my app for me, the process specifically. What this means is that now auto restart will kick in for when it can realize that it can start an app quickly. So for example, in Kevin's example of I have an Aspire app with multiple projects underneath, you make a change in one of those csproj files, and one of those projects is now hot reload can't act upon it, it can now just go restart that process. Your debugger's still working, everything's still working. It'll go restart that process, hook your debugger back in, and you're not having to stop your entire session, bring it back up again. Low quality of life improvement when it comes to hot reload. Then we got one with, bring these over. I wrote a quick little app. Well, I can't say I wrote the app. Copilot wrote me a quick little app. And historically, when I run a function and I'm trying to see what's being returned out the function, it's been a little bit of a pain point for me. I have to usually go into the function, set a breakpoint at like the last curly brace, go to that last breakpoint, try to see it before we X out the function again, in which case I've lost it. Now, by default, so here we're about to run our build greeting function. If I step over, the contrast right now isn't being very nice to us, but there's actually a little preview for the post, and this is called the post return value, that's automatically showing you what is the return value of the functions being displayed after you make every function call. Once again, little quality of life things. Like this for me is really awesome. I don't have to just save off an arbitrary variable to go see what was the return of that function. It's now just showing it in line. With this, if I have a very large input, so for example, I asked it to generate a poem, and this poem generation is a debugging poem. Where did that go? Oh, it's on a different screen. There we go. Let's see if we can zoom it in. It's not cooperating. Okay. You can't totally see it. Very long poem, though. Historically, on this text visualizer, you weren't able to actually search. So you have a long bit of text, you have a JSON file, you're trying to find some return values. You can't actually search in this window. Now you can. So you can use your normal Control F. You can go find stanza. Whoopsies. It'd help if I can spell. It's in there, right? No. You got a selection right now. Oops, thank you. I was like, I did this earlier and it worked. This isn't using AI, so it's deterministic. So I can't actually now search in my window. I can go find things. There we go. So that's kind of my quick summary of the why didn't this exist before. Those are all the things. Any questions over any of those features? I know they're rapid fire, but great.
Hot reload versus editing continue. I know C# has been playing catch up on editing continue for a long time, but this idea that I don't actually want to restart my app. I want to keep the state. I just want to make modification, let it continue to run. Is that any changes there? Because like hot reload, they seem to use some of the terms interchangeably.
Yeah.
Whether you're going to completely restart the app kind of transparently, or whether you're just literally applying the changes. And there were some comments about you don't even have to stop your execution so just go change the code and you'll execute differently. But knowing when you're going to get a restart is kind of the question.
Yeah, this is very specifically not around edit and continue. This is around, one, stopping the amount of times or reducing the number of times that you need to do a full restart. And two, adding in some quality of life things to where instead of I have 4 applications running and they're all interdependent, I'm now only going to restart the processes under the hood that need to restart. So it's not quite, it's almost like we're moving towards edit continue, but we're still doing a full process restart under the hood. You're just going to become less aware of it. And if you have a full stack thing like a Spire app with multiple projects, these will just become more transparent. So it's moving it slightly in the background, but not full edit and continue necessarily yet. Any other questions? Yeah.
I may have missed it, but I think you skipped hide symbols under 5.
I did skip that. I can go over that quickly. It's one of the little, I'll show it quickly. The things that, see, at least people are watching. I skipped it because I was like, I don't know if that's the most interesting. It's one of those, if you see it and it bugs you, like if it hurts, don't do that anymore. So you can actually, in your settings now configure, let's see if this is a good, yeah, here we go. So you have your CS file, and then you have all these kind of nested things you can have underneath. Basically, a lot of people are like, that's junk, I don't really care. I'm just going to open up the CS proj file. There's now a setting to basically turn off these parts underneath my actual CS proj file. Don't ever show me those in my Solution Explorer. I don't care. Awesome, we'll be turning that on. Great. Any other questions? Yes?
Does the inline pull request comments, is that only for like GitHub repos, or would that work for like Azure DevOps repos?
They say stuff should work for DevOps repos. I haven't totally figured out where the integration for that hooks in. There's a lot of DevOps integration things that they talk about, whether it comes in through you logging in via your profile or otherwise, but so I think that's where they get the credentials, but there's also things that later on we'll talk about where they get your DevOps information somehow, apparently. So there you go. Okay, continue on. We're going to skip the video because we just saw that. In VS 2022, I remember I was teaching a class and I thought this was like the latest and greatest thing when we got tab completion. I remember I was sitting there, I'm like, I'm going to write a test, and I hit tab, and like the entire next test shows up, and I'm going to write a test and hit tab, and the entire next test shows up, and I was obsessed with this. And I think we've come a long ways when we're talking about the past 4 years, as you probably have experienced. So I want to talk now, we're now moving kind of away just quality of life to more AI-related features, because that's where everything's going. And we're going to dive into Copilot in your flow. So this isn't full agentic. This is just like the little, once again, quality of life improvements that also use some level of AI to make your life a little bit easier. The first one of these is in your search. So in this project, we have, this is some tooling for the Essential C# book and bringing from Word docs to an actual website and PDFs and similar. And I can't remember, I come to this repo every once in a while, and I can't quite remember the file names. So I'll use a command like Control-P, which brings me to my code search. And I know there's a file around like a parser, and it's like P something. I can't quite exactly remember what the name of the thing is. And if everything cooperates, I thought I was connected to the internet. Okay, it's not wanting to give it to me. AI will actually, though, search your project and look for what did you mean. So it's able to intelligently, there we go, now it's working. It's able to look that I'm trying to kind of search for this kind of related thing. In this case, I typed in parser PIO. There's some acronym for what we called the file. I couldn't quite remember. It's a parser file, and it's going, did you actually mean the POI parser CS file? Is that actually what you're searching for? I'm like, that's exactly what I'm searching for. So I don't need to actually type it in exactly right. Copilot will come in and try to save your intention. So I could actually click on that. It's going to redo the search and get me to where I'm actually trying to go to. Now, I actually already showed this feature. I told you close your eyes, so everyone close your eyes and you don't know what I'm talking about. But in Visual Studio 2026, when you open up the Git menu, there is, in fact, a button here that is a sparkly chat window. If you use GitHub a lot, you may be familiar with the GitHub coding review agent, where you can say, hey, Copilot, come review my GitHub pull request and give me some feedback. The problem with that is all my coworkers can see that feedback, so that's not so great. I want a little pre-review. So what can happen here is if I click that little button, it'll take all the changes that are in my Git, and it'll actually review those locally and give me comments. It won't put, those aren't actually going to GitHub. This is all local. So I'm able to kind of get a first pass of an agent, give me a double check on what I'm doing. So in this case, it left one peer review comment, and it said, you actually removed the access modifier. Is this actually what you wanted to do? That seems a little weird. I'm like, I did not actually want to remove this access modifier. That's embarrassing. If someone saw that, that wouldn't be good. So, yes, Dan.
Does that do it just on changes that aren't committed, or does that do it to the 6 changes that you have unhooked?
This is currently just doing on the changes that are pending here. So you can kind of, it's not a full pull request. There's kind of some other hooks, but this one is, yeah. So there's other buttons that we could get to that can do some different things, but this is the easiest and lightest weight one, I think, out of them all. So next one is called the Code Actions context menu. So if you ever just sit there in your, I'm going to dismiss this review, you can actually right-click on your menu, and you now have a couple extra options here. If the zoom doesn't work, zoom's not going to work, but you got a couple extra options now for your Code Actions context menu to get quickly to some Copilot actions. You can now have it explain for you what does this code do, so you can select a block of text and you can say, explain this to me. You can have it optimize that code, generate comments for you, generate tests, or add to chat. So for example, I could select this, I can right click, I can say add to chat, and then now when I jump over to my Copilot, it has automatically injected that context in for the next time that I chat with my Copilot agent. This is maybe instead of historically, I need to go type in selection and then bring those in that way. There's also a thing called adaptive paste. So if we jump back over to this sample return text app that I've quickly written up, and we have some random things we're doing. We can build some greetings, generate some poems, and I have some code in JavaScript that is actually perfect for this app. It's called the generate quote code. AI wrote it for me, but doesn't matter. I can actually, so normally you'd paste with Control V, right? And if we give it a second, it would actually be smart enough to do this, but I'm going to force it to by using Shift-Alt-V. And when I paste, as long as everything's cooperating, AI's been a little funky so far, it will actually have Copilot analyze the thing that I just pasted and then look at the context around what's going on. Hasn't caught on yet. And I didn't see a trigger. Shift-Alt-V. There we go. We see the 3 little dots of it actually doing stuff now. It'll look at the context around it and try to come up with a helpful suggestion. In this case, it's looking, going, you're writing a bunch of C# code. That's JavaScript code. Let me help you get it over to the code that I want it to. So there we go. I now have C# code. I functionally just pasted code in. So you can just paste, and it'll also come up with a tab completion for you. I used Shift-Alt-V, though, to kind of just force it down that path.
Shift-Alt, not Shift-Control.
Shift-Alt-V. We'll pull up a key bindings list at the end.
Control-V has a whole new, like, in Word, that's stuff.
Totally. Yep. So this is Shift-Alt-V. We have to keep finding more and more keyboard combinations to not overlap. Yes. Just wait till we start incorporating tab or something. So there's additional benefits. It can go so far as it could be in another language, like non-English, and it'll try to translate it over for you and stuff like that. And even little things of for some reason, someone out on GitHub uses four spaces on their CS proj file. I clearly want 2 spaces, and when I paste it in, it'll go, oh, let me actually fix the formatting for you, or let me take this entire file from a different project I have into this project. Let me automatically update the namespaces to be appropriate as you paste it in, so you don't have to go through and change all your namespaces and stuff like that.
So I know in different features like the GitHub generate comments, there's a different menu in Visual Studio to edit the descriptions. It's like if you want to have conventional comments, even though if you have that in your instructions file, you have to then go to this separate window. Does this use the coding agent that you selected so it can use all the instructions? Like when you paste it, does it use the relevant instructions? Like if you generate a service and you paste it, but then not all the, maybe it's a primary constructor. In your instructions file, you say use primary constructors for C#. Does it use the instruction files from the rest of the project?
Great question. I have no idea. As far as I know, when I've played with it, it doesn't seem that kind of hip. It seems very much just like I'm seeing what's around and what my project looks like, and I'm just conforming things to that, versus this is a full agent that's kind of trying to go do your thing. So that's my guess, but I can't say that with complete confidence. So that's adaptive paste. 2 small things to kind of go over. One, you can now paste URLs straight into your chat window, and GitHub Copilot actually knows what to do with that and won't it used to go PowerShell, let me go do a HTTP call against this website. It's now tightly integrated. And B, I can actually say, there's a git changes thing. So once again, I also have had Copilot in the past use the command line to try to go find my git changes. I often use this when I'm switching between VS Code back over to Visual Studio or vice versa, or where Copilot goes and does something, and then I'm like, I need to go take over and fix this. I go back to my session, I'm like, let's continue on. It's I noticed something changed here, let me switch it back. I'm like, no, I just did that, that's intentional, don't touch, take your hands off. Sometimes I like using this to say, hey, go look at the changes that were just made. Those are actually intentional. Continue from there. Don't try to just revert things. So a little bit tighter integration. So let's just jump over to another project. Got lots of projects today, so this is fun. We're going to jump over into our classic test explorer. That's not the right one. Here we go. So if I run this test, it shouldn't be passing. We'll find out in a second. We have a build, and then a test. There we go. We got a failing test. As maybe as expected, the words of the day are agentic and Copilot everything. So if I right-click on this failing test, I can actually say debug with Copilot. So first of all, I could just say, could you try to give me some insight about what's happening? I can go one step farther and actually say, let's go debug. that gives it some pretty powerful tools, in my opinion, where it is able to actually now go set breakpoints in my tests, breakpoints in my code, actually go look at stack traces, actually go look at exceptions, and those kinds of things in order to figure out what's actually going on in my test. It's able to go rerun the tests, run the code. So here it's now set a breakpoint. I haven't set any breakpoints. It's set a breakpoint. It's going to iterate past the breakpoint, find out what's happening, look at the variables live, do all those kinds of things in order to try to solve and accomplish a test. It's no longer I have to like look at the thing, copy the context in, and then go back and forth. It's now doing this all for me. So it's did one level of debugging. Now it's going to go remove the direct breakpoints, rerun the test to make sure it actually fixed it, and it looks like it did actually fix the test. That's pretty powerful. A couple other nuances when it comes to this. They've also added some increased exception. So when you run into an exception, you come up with your exception window where it says, hey, this exception was thrown, and you can say, let's actually explore this using Copilot. And it's not maybe as useful on a tiny repo, but it's smart enough to even go look at your issues on your GitHub repo or your DevOps repo. It'll use either wherever your code is. And like, let's go look at my past issues on the repo or other pull requests or the code in the repo to try to figure out where this exception came from and what's causing it. So it uses a lot more context than maybe used to. One that I haven't figured out to quickly replicate also is if you've ever set a breakpoint and it's that hollow circle where it says no symbols have actually been loaded and you're like, I can't actually breakpoint and I can't actually debug. The button's not there, but it'd be somewhere right around here. If you run into that situation, you can actually ask Copilot now to go get your solution in a state where you can actually debug through that. So it'll go try to compile, go find the source codes, the PDBs, whatever it needs to do in order to get that file into a debuggable state. Another little quality of life thing where I don't have to try to go figure it out. It'll go figure it out for me. And there we go. So that's Copilot, kind of in your flow, day to day. Any questions around those kinds of things?
So have there been any improvements to get it to be quiet? Because like, I've noticed that it used to be like, here's a suggestion, and it was kind of grayed out and you could tell. Now it seems to be like, it looks just like the rest of your code, but if you keep typing, it disappears. I was like, that's not the code I want, and like, you're just hammering on escape, trying to get back to being able to type.
A lot of the things are unfortunately like on-off. So if you just want to turn off your completions for some time, you can always do that in your settings here and just say, turn off your next edit suggestions or your Copilot completions. That is always an option. There's not really a dial to be like, only do it if you're like this confident. That'd maybe be nice, but there's not quite that level of settings so far. I haven't experienced that a ton, where usually once I hit escape, it usually kind of gets the memo. But yeah, it's kind of an on or off at this point. Any other questions? Yeah.
I guess like a lot of these are really sweet features. How do they like count against like your budgets for tokens and all that?
Totally. It depends on the general rule is they will. The models that are used though for a lot of these, the small ones are usually counting towards like your GPT-4.1 versus like right now I have Opus 4.5, which is using like 3 times my premium tokens. A lot of these models are configurable for the feature that you're choosing. And then also a lot of those low ones are actually using kind of smaller models like 4.1, ones that are a little more antiquated that don't use quite the premium request. So they do still count against. I don't find that they count against significantly. It's kind of like when you use an actual GitHub and you say, hey, coding agent, go at it. It's going to work for like 20 minutes, and it actually uses only 1 premium request over that entire time. So I find it doesn't use a ton of my premium requests. That's usually what I find is my limiting factor, not just tokens, but it is still using them. There's some configuration, some of those like the adaptive paste. I don't know if they have a model control for like that one specifically of which model are you using, but any other questions? Great question. How much time we got? Okay, I'm not going to go too far into these, We're now to like the big wow. You could go find this on the front marketing pages side of things. But these are the big agent capabilities that Copilot now has in Visual Studio. Debugger we just showed, that's coming from the unit test side, but you can also get that natively inside your solution using the @ symbol. So if I use the @ symbol, I'll get kind of all the things I'm showing to me, which is kind of, I don't know the right way to, they're different agents, but it's almost like the personality of your Copilot that you're wanting in that moment. Am I wanting the debugger personality for my Copilot, or am I wanting the profiler or the test? And obviously those all have strengths and weaknesses with them. I'm probably not going to go ask the profiler one to go write me some unit tests because it's just not its capability. Just like I won't ask a backend engineer to go write me some, to go center a div, because it just will never happen. So these are kind of the overall coding agents that are now available. We have, still on the zoom it. We have debugger and profiler, test, modernize, GitHub. The GitHub one, I'm kind of just going to scratch that out for now because I think it's the least impressive out of the 4. Debugger, starting there, I think that's really awesome. I can now ask it, so I can say @debugger, let's go solve whatever problem I have. Something's going on weird. Can you take the breakpoints, set them for me, figure this out for me? The profiler, I actually have started using even today. I have a quick extensions class. I find that very often I am going and writing where not null. That's just like I'm writing that link statement all the time. And there's a bunch of different ways to do it. I could do where.select. There's a whole slew of ways I could do this. So I wrote one naive approach, and I'm just like, maybe this is how I can do it, wrapped it up. And I'm personally not an expert at profiling methods. But GitHub Copilot, by using the profiler, so if I do @profiler, I apologize, this is, the text there is even bigger than when I start typing, but something's weird there. I can say, hey, profiler, could you go analyze this piece of code? And what it'll actually go do for me is go so far as to go write me benchmarks to know where its starting place is. Using benchmark.net, it'll go write benchmarks to know what's the efficiency or memory usage and the speed of your extension method that we're trying to optimize. It'll actually go and run, if I can find where it stuck it. There we go. It'll actually go run a profiler against it as it's running it. And then it's going to go try to make helpful improvements. Obviously, this is a very localized example. I'm saying one function as like a one-line call, but you can actually go send this across your app. Earlier today even, I was working with someone who said, our Grafana dashboards are saying we have really high memory usage on our application. What is going on? And all of us are like looking at each other. We're like, I don't know totally how to figure that on the fly. I see it says high memory. I don't know what's causing it. And we're able to throw Profiler to try to give us some insight as to what is happening there. I think this is a more niche one, but really useful one in terms of actually improving performance, reducing memory. I also heard another person who went to a company and said they talked about this profiler. The company went and used the profiler, like just a couple devs went and played with it, and they're like, oh yeah, within a couple days, we knocked out like 30% of our memory usage over that period of time. I'm like, that seems really significant for kind of an aside. So, profiler. We got the test one. Don't think this needs illustration, but as you can expect, this is just more in tune with your C# code. It is now going to go create your full-fledged tests, and I think the tweaks in here aren't brand new. They're just more tightly integrated in the ability to run and actually test what it's writing and iterate on these quicker. Once again, as you can't tell, I have my favorites, which are profiler and then modernize. So modernize is kind of the last one that I kind of want to cover here. I've found that Copilot is really good at upgrading my .NET application when it's simple. I'm usually fairly good about kind of keeping on the bleeding edge, so I'm like, hey, upgrade from .NET 9 to .NET 10. And it's like, I know how to do that. I change the numbers 9 to the number 10, upgrade some NuGet packages, and then you're good to go. Nothing's breaking, it just works. Unfortunately, every once in a while, we run into some applications that are a little bit older than .NET 9. And in those cases, there is a mode called @modernize. And let's modernize this application to .NET 10. Let's actually go do this on a different application. Let's use this one. It's fantastic. Let's modernize this application .NET 10 and C# 14 using all the latest things. And this is a much more intensive process. And what I mean by that is not just going to go change the numbers and just be like 10, 10, 10, latest versions, have at it. It's going to actually go analyze your entire project. So it's a lot more optimized for old and legacy repositories. And it's going to create an entire plan. So it's going to create even a markdown file if you'd like. And then it's going to actually iterate and go start executing that plan step by step of your different projects that are in your solution in order to get everything up to the version you want. It's also even using NuGet, the NuGet tooling built in, and it's not just like going and querying the NuGet website. It's actually able to use some intelligence to say, oh, this is the versions that are compatible with my different projects, and making sure that I'm not just revving things arbitrarily and having conflicts. It actually has NuGet, the NuGet tool built in. You can see that down in here in the NuGet part, where it's actually able to tightly integrate that. So it'll go try to discover your upgrade scenarios. It's actually really good about prompting you kind of down the pathways. I don't know if it'll finish in time for this case. But it'll go prompt you down the upgrade scenarios where it says, oh, do you want to first, before we go, just upgrade .NET 10? Do you want me to go check out the NuGet packages as well? Or those kinds of things. So that's modernized. I found for larger code bases, especially ones that are multiple iterations behind, this is kind of the way to go when it's not as simple as just bump version numbers and you're off and running. Yeah?
You ever unleashed this on an old Angular project?
I've not unleashed this on an old Angular project. Let me know how it goes though. So I have tried this on like legacy, like pre.NET Core projects, and I took one just off GitHub that I found. I just used some GitHub query syntax and said have at it, and it did fairly well at getting that up to latest and greatest from what I could tell. It wasn't my code base, so I'm not an expert of all of what it should do, but everything compiled, and I figured that's pretty good. It's a good start. Yeah. So, yeah, that's kind of the features of Modernize. Once again, I could talk like an hour about each one of these, and there's lots of nuances when it comes to each one of these Copilot capabilities, but that's what we have there. So all in all, those are kind of the main personalities. So that I kind of like that word now that I've come up with it. The main personalities of Copilot that are now integrated into Visual Studio. So you have the debugger, actually able to kind of work through the debugging sessions as you might. You have the profiler that's actually able to analyze your CPU usage and memory allocations, surface performance bottleneck. It's actually able to create benchmark.NET projects. I've run into this where I go, we clearly have a problem around here, but that code's so tightly integrated into our entire thing that creating a benchmark.NET project around that just seems like a pain. It's almost easier for me to just copy out that code and start rewriting the entire stack up to explain it. Having AI do it for me, lovely. And then we have the test one. No, I don't think that's crazy new. It's just more tightly integrated and modernized, and then GitHub. That all to say, I have moved more towards using Visual Studio 2026 just because of the tighter integration with C# specifically. VS Code, great, but because Visual Studio is very built for C++ and C#, it's able to have a lot of the intelligence and smarts that I maybe wouldn't be able to get in VS Code. Those integrations of like, my breakpoint isn't set, can I use Copilot to go figure that out, and it knows C# syntax enough to do that? Or let me go explore exceptions and I have the intelligence to do that. So features are a lot more tightly coupled in a way that you can't maybe do with just the extension onto VS Code. So, questions, yeah?
Probably shouldn't be asking this, but can you add modes? Is that an extensibility point in the same way it is with root?
Say that again?
Can you add more modes yourself as a VS extensibility developer?
So, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but VS Code you can. In Visual Studio, I've not experienced a way to be able to add different agents. So on VS Code, you can add your own custom agents. And so basically when you hit your, where's the, oh, we're now down. Yeah, I was about to say we're not in the right thing. Here we go. So when you have ask an agent on VS Code, you can add your own custom one that says, now you're the researcher from your example, and you're allowed these tools, and these are your instructions. That has not moved its way over to Visual Studio from what I found yet. I find that they're catching up, so I'm hopeful. We also found recently that Visual Studio is, as of last week, uses less memory on my machine than Visual Studio Code. So that seems like a feat. And I don't know what they're doing with the Copilot extension, but I have 6 Visual Studio instances open right now, and I think it's like 3rd or 4th down below Chrome on my task manager. So we're doing pretty well. That's true. I don't know. So right now I'm counting maybe 3 gigs across my, you can count 6 instances of Visual Studio. So it's a lot more lightweight than I found it was in the past, where I can only open up 2 instances and that's it. Yeah. Any other questions? So that's kind of the high level. We went 100 miles an hour. I hope that some of those things are nuggets that you can pull out and start diving in deeper on. But any other questions? Visual Studio 2026 features. Hopefully you're all convinced to go install it. Go install Insiders if you want the extra cool features. But with that, thank you all.
Yeah, keep down your 47 screens you have going up here.
I know.
Well, that was a lot of cool stuff. I honestly was kind of disappointed when I saw 2020. It's like, oh, we got a new version of Visual Studio. It's just going to be more bloated than the last. And I've been pleasantly surprised. I gotta
It's so
say.
lightweight.
It feels lighter weight. It feels like it's doing more things. And it feels like, for a while, I felt like, look, I can pay a bunch of money and get Visual Studio, the real one, or I can for free get VS Code, which is better. And it's like, what's going on? And I feel like now they're actually kind of delivering on, hey, you're paying money for this thing, you should get a premium experience. And so it's kind of cool that they, even though it did take them a number of years to get there, I'm glad we've kind of arrived at what seems like a significantly better spot. So.
And I feel like I was forcing myself over to VS Codes, anticipating that was the future for a while.
Me too.
And I was like, okay, I got it. When I taught class and stuff, I was like, you can use Visual Studio, but
if you're
like
a real coder, you're going to be over here.
You might be here in 5 years, and this feels like a step back where I'm like, actually, we're going to play in the Visual Studio.
I missed the last part. Do they actually have good TypeScript support yet? Oh, no, they don't.
Am I going to ask? Why would I show that? It's .NET Conf.
Yeah,
we don't mention TypeScript. We don't mention Python.
But we do mention.
What about Razor syntax? Visual Studio?
Yeah, Razor syntax or Vue or have add-ins or anything like that.
Razor syntax has some improvements that came.
Okay. Anyway.
Yeah.